Hi, everyone, and welcome to our fifth and final session of Youth Ministry 101. In today's session, we're going to be talking about how to plan and implement a youth ministry gathering. Before we dive into the content, I think one of the challenges that we're facing in youth ministry in the world today is how do we bring the gospel message of Jesus Christ to teenagers that's done in an interactive, dynamic way? I think a lot of times, unfortunately, in our parish settings, ministry to youth it's a hard thing, and I think it's hard to engage teenagers, and a lot of times teens see the faith as something that's boring. As a result, we see the constant struggle. Confirmation has become this graduation from the church where they've done faith formation for 10, 9, 11 years, whatever that is, and they're ready to move on from it because they're bored with the faith or it's not something that's engaging. When we know as followers of Jesus Christ that the faith is alive and it's exciting and it's something that's real and authentic and can really change and transform our lives. But how do we tell that to a teenager? Well, in this session, the goal of it is to talk about how to plan a gathering, how to really catechize youth in a way that's fun, but also in a way that's interactive and that's going to lead to a real encounter with Jesus Christ. So, how do we plan a youth night? How do we present the gospel message to teenagers in a fun, real, and dynamic way? So I want to just share a couple pointers with you, things that I would do, and then I want to share a specific type of method I would do to plan out youth night. So first of all, a couple essential elements. There's a ton of things that we should be doing for youth nights, but these are a couple just essential things that I wanted to focus on. So number one, having an engaging environment. I think the last thing we want to do when we're trying to engage teenagers is just have them walk into an empty classroom, social hall, something that's going to be looking very uh, academic, or I don't know, something that doesn't look fun or not engaging is not the way we want to go. When we're talking about having an engaging environment, having things that are going to intentionally disengage teens from where they've come from, and be ways really to even before we begin to say a word, engage them into the night. So having things as simple as music playing when they walk in, having decorations that pertain to the night or activities that we're going to be doing. Maybe you're doing some sort of, maybe you're playing like we did this in one of my youth nights, played like a game of extreme Jenga where we had like these giant Jenga blocks. And so when they walked in, they saw this giant Jenga tower and it just kind of like piqued their interest. What is this all about? And then probably one of the most important things is always in some prominent location having a sacred space. It could be something very simple. It could be something as simple as a table with a Bible, a statue, or it could be something more elaborate, but something more to show that we are in a sacred environment and that we are going to be entering into an encounter with Jesus Christ. That second point is a non-spiritual draw. What I mean by that is, of course, with most of our nights, the ultimate goal is to lead into an encounter with Jesus Christ. But as we talked about with the stages of discipleship, that first stage, pre-evangelization, getting a teen's foot in the door, is going to be often taking the form of something that's not spiritual, something that's fun, social, and that's going to be that initial draw just to get them there. So whether that's like a big game of dodgeball or a game of capture the flag, or and we're going to talk about this in a second, food, different ways to draw a team there. That's going to hopefully lead later on to the spiritual. Having a plan of evangelization. This doesn't have to be something super elaborate, but just a simple plan with your core members and how you plan to engage and evangelize teens through relational ministry. So, like one simple example of this is before the night, just divide up your core team and say, okay, during dinner, each of us is going to go to a different table, or maybe like Bob's going to go to this table and he's going to learn one interesting fact about each team there. Susan, she's going to be on the lookout for like that one teen that is kind of on the fringes and doesn't really have a lot of friends. So things like that, having a simple plan for evangelization. And then the final point I put here is food. Food is crucial. This is one of the most necessary things besides Jesus of having at a youth night. Whether if you can have a meal, that's the best form, but maybe for a different reason you can't, at least have snacks, have some sort of food. Food's always good. And if you don't have food, it really is hard to to have that constant draw of getting teens to come to nights. So before we jump into the night, just a couple tips on planning out the night. These are pretty self-explanatory, but just kind of go through these. Picking a topic that you want to talk about, coming up with some sort of catchy name, catchphrases. It can be an optional step. You don't have to do that, but that always helps. Promoting the night through social media, through Blocknote, through email, bulletin, and then meeting with your team to plan out the night, create that outline, assigning roles, who's doing the teaching, who's leading small groups, who's leading the game, whatever that may be, and then coming up with that plan for evangelization. And then it's time to actually implement and facilitate a youth night. So what does that look like? And what I want to really, the heart of this session today is the ecclesial method. So what is the ecclesial method? The ecclesial method is a 5-part method that can be used for youth ministry or really any type of ministry that's going to be aimed at through a process of bringing a topic of the faith to a teenager. So we're going to be doing this through 5 different ways: through disengaging them, through introducing a topic, through teaching the topic, showing them how that topic can be applied, and possibly providing concrete ways at a youth night to apply the topic, and finally sending them forward. So that's these 5 steps of preparation, proclamation, explanation, application, and celebration. So we're just going to take these through one by one, and then I'm going to use a real example of what this can actually look like in a youth night. So what is the preparation? Preparation step is an intentional beginning to your gathering. That's really going to be kind of 2 parts. One part is going to be really some unstructured sort of hangout, social community time. This would be the best time, in my opinion, to have like a meal or snack where teens can come in, relax. This can also be the best time for your core to have relational ministry. And then transitioning into some sort of maybe concrete, more organized activity. And I use the word calculated disengagement. What I mean by this is intentionally, first of all, recognizing that teens are going to be coming from a lot of different environments, whether it's school, sports, hanging out with friends, doing homework, a lot of different things. So how are we disengaging them from that environment and engaging them into the night? So a lot of times this takes place through some sort of large group game, icebreaker, maybe it's in small groups, but something that's intentional, that relates to the night, that's going to provide a transition into what we're going to be talking about for the night. So that's the preparation step. The next step is the proclamation. This will be the shortest step of the ecclesial method, but it's probably one of the most important. And what the proclamation is a word or a short phrase or scripture verse that's really going to introduce and sum up the entire topic that you're going to be talking about. So the proclamation can be used in an opening prayer to kind of introduce the topic, and then should be something that's repeated throughout the night, whether it's in a teaching, whether it's through activities and small groups, prayer. That's really going to be hammering home what you're trying to get across, to the point that, if the team's leaving the night, if there's only one thing they can remember from the night, it should be the proclamation verse. So a good example of this can be, let's say you're doing a night on sin and forgiveness. Your proclamation could be the verse from Romans that says, "For the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life." A quick, short phrase that you can use at the beginning to introduce the topic. And then if someone's doing a teaching about that, they can be repeating that throughout their teaching. And it could be something that's just repeated through everything that you do for the night, to where if a teen's leaving, that's hammering their head. But the wages of sin is death. The gift of God is eternal life. Something that sums up that topic of sin and forgiveness. Then we move into the explanation. This is the main teaching portion of the night. But this doesn't have to be, some super long lecture or some super long video or anything like that. Really, the main goal of this is to provide something that's tangible, that can explain how a topic of the faith is important and what it means for our everyday life. So there's some examples of what this looks like. Probably most of the time it's going to take the form of a talk that's maybe just 10 or 15 minutes long, doesn't need to be long at all. Maybe it's a witness or a testimony, which could be done through a core member, or maybe it's an older teen, just telling a brief 5 to 7 minute story about how their life has been changed by Christ in a specific way that's related to that topic. So again, if we're using the example of sin and forgiveness, maybe it's someone who is doing a witness on on the struggle of sin, but how through God, through God's forgiveness, they've come to know who God is and how that's transformed their life. There's also other ways to do teachings that's not directly someone talking. Different interactive ways or meditations. A good example of this is if you're doing a night on the passion and death of Jesus. The teaching could be a teen Stations of the Cross, or another time I did a night on parables. Our teaching was we did a 2-minute intro of what the basic points of a parable is, and then we split the teens in small groups and gave them or gave them kind of modern day topics and said write a modern day parable of what that looks like. So different ways, and I think it's good. Probably a lot of the times it's going to take the form of a talk, but if you can kind of mix it up every once in a while, that's great too. The fourth step is the application. What this is either a way in which you can actually apply the topic or discuss how the topic can be applied in life. The most common form this is going to take is small groups, having just time for teens to talk about, process a topic. Also, maybe it's different forms of prayer. Maybe you're doing a night on the Eucharist. Your application could be Eucharistic adoration. Maybe you're doing a night on service, and this is a great way. Your application can be a service project, but always having different ways in which you can apply or discuss how a topic can be applied. And then the final step is our celebration. This is our wrap-up step in which we're bringing an intentional ending to the night. It's a good time to incorporate prayer into the night. And then always just using that proclamation verse to wrap up what you're talking about for the night, and then presenting some sort of goal and challenge, and then time having some sort of brief, fun prayer-based activity to close the night. So that's the ecclesial method. Now, if you remember at the last session, we talked about mapping out the year, and here's kind of that sample calendar we used. If we're doing like a once a month sort of youth ministry gathering, what that kind of looks like. And so we have social gatherings, which are noted in green. We have catechetical gatherings, which are noted in purple, the issue night in red, and then the service in blue. And so what I want to do is I just want to zoom into one of these and use the ecclesial method to talk about how we can plan a specific night. So let's take that first one, the October one, where the catechetical night on being rooted in identity. So how do we plan a youth night in which we're talking about identity? So I'm going to pull up a sample outline of what this looks like using the ecclesial method. So here's our outline, and this is based off of a 2-hour long youth night. It may be a little shorter or longer depending on how you do it. I would recommend 2 hours. That's usually a good time. So let's just walk through this and talk about how this would work. So the preparation is actually going to be the longest step, and I have it here as an hour, which is taking up about half of the entire night. And so what we're going to do, the teens are going to be coming in. There's going to be music playing. We're going to have a make your own taco night. They're going to go through the line making the tacos. They're going to sit down. We're not going to have assigned seats. Just invite them to sit anywhere. Just have the first half hour laid back, socializing, eating dinner. And your core team is executing that evangelization plan where we're kind of splitting up among the teens. And maybe some are going to certain tables. Some are trying to recognize the teens that don't have maybe many friends, who may be sitting by themselves, and how we can incorporate them into the rest of the group. And then as dinner winds down, take a second to recognize any new people that are here for the first time, or any people who have birthdays in that month, and give them prizes. I would always have a prize basket. That was, at the beginning of each year, I'd go to like Dollar Tree or the dollar section of Target and just like load up this prize basket with all these cheap prizes. And that was kind of a fun way to sort of start the night off, giving prizes to new people or birthdays. And then transitioning into our game for the night, which in this situation is Capture the Flag, which is hopefully going to be an intentional way in which we can introduce the topic of identity. So we're going to split everyone into 2 teams, and we're going to invite them before we start the game to create like a team name, a team identity, come up with like a team battle cry, paint their faces, or come up with a chant, do different things. And we're going to play this epic game of Capture the Flag. And as Capture the Flag winds down and ends, we're going to regather in the main space. Take a couple minutes to kind of process the game, talk about what were some fun things in the game, or some challenges, and then use it as an opportunity to transition to the night. Whereas either you as a youth minister or whoever's facilitating the night can say something like, hey, we just played this awesome game of Capture the Flag. You created this team identity with your teammates. And tonight we're going to be talking about identity, maybe not in the sense of Capture the Flag, but identity in life. What does that mean to have an identity? And our faith, what our faith tells us that identity comes from Genesis chapter 1, verse 27, which is your proclamation verse. And you can invite team to read that, do an opening prayer. God created mankind in his image, and use that as a tool to use throughout the night to kind of repeat that verse over and over. And from there, we're going to transition into our teaching for the night, our explanation. We're going to invite Bob, one of our core members, to come up, and he's going to give a 10-minute talk on what identity is in life, what the world tells us identity is, and ultimately what it means to have an identity in God and how that relates to baptism and maybe some of the sacraments of initiation, Eucharist, confirmation. And then that's only going to take like 10 minutes. It's not going to be a super long teaching. From there, we're going to invite one of our other core members to give a brief witness on how they've struggled with their identity, but ultimately in life they found it in God. And if you'll notice, as we're going through this, we're kind of starting on, the really fun sort of social, and then moving down deeper and deeper into the spiritual, where we're going to, just focus on the fun stuff, then talk about the topic at hand, and then we're going to move into our application, where we're going to invite the teams to share kind of what's on their heart. We're not going to just jump right into the discussion. We're going to have a process which we do small groups to small group introductions, always having some sort of icebreaker, and then breaking into discussions. And here I have some discussion questions listed out. You can either use those as a guide, or if you don't use those at all, that's fine too. Really, the whole point of small groups is to create a faith-based discussion that's hopefully around the topic at hand, but really giving teens a chance to share what's on their heart. And then after small groups, we're going to move into our final point of the night, which is going to be kind of the peak sort of spiritual part in our celebration. We're going to gather into the church. You as a youth minister or whoever's facilitating the night, maybe it's a 1 or 2 minute wrap up, and then kind of goes into a simple sort of prayer exercise where we're going to say, let's say you're the person facilitating. Everyone gathers back in the church. Say, we talked about identity tonight, what that means to have an identity. And we all have different forms of identity, whether it's in school or sports or friends or hobbies, different activities, but we all have an identity in God, or at least we all have the invitation to have that identity in God if we want that. And so what we're going to do, what's called a renewal of baptismal promises, and you can invite a priest or a deacon or someone to read through this renewal of baptismal promises. And then we're going to invite all the teens, we're going to invite everyone to just spread around the church, place a bowl of holy water and a crucifix, a table in the front, and we're going to play some music. I want you to pray about what that means to have an identity in God. And if you feel inclined at any point, I invite you to come up, dip your finger in the holy water, and make the sign of the cross just as a sign of placing our identity in Jesus Christ. And so just have this kind of simple but deeper sort of prayer experience to end the night. And then afterwards, say a closing prayer, gather everyone in the main space, have ice cream, celebrate the night, announce your up next night, any other upcoming events, and then dismiss. And that in a nutshell is really how we can use the ecclesial method to do a youth night. So hopefully that method is helpful for you. That's certainly not the only method. There's lots of other things out there, but that's probably the one I have the most experience with. But really the ultimate goal in doing youth ministry is we're trying to bring the gospel message of Jesus Christ to teenagers. And again, to do that, we have to do that in a way that's interactive and applicable to their lives. It can't be something that just, hey, let's sit down and talk about Jesus, because that's not going to work most of the time. Teens have real lives and they have real struggles, real issues, and we have to recognize that, and we have to meet them where they're at, bring the gospel message to them. Just as Jesus, through the incarnation, brought himself to us as humanity, and all the people he interacted with when he walked on this earth, he went to them. He went to the sinners, the tax collectors, the prostitutes. He went out to them. We have to do the same. That's what ministry is about. And so hopefully this program's been helpful for you as you move into planning and launching your program here in the next few months. Just some lasting tips, and really it's reiterating a lot of the stuff we've been talking about in this whole thing. But don't be overwhelmed, and you don't have to set your expectations super high. You don't have to think, hey, we have to get like hundreds of kids to just be part of our program. Really, the goal moving into year one is in a year from now, next April, May, June, when you're wrapping up your first year, if you have like 5 kids, 10 kids that are coming on a consistent basis, you're doing a great job. Even if it's just a few, because really the whole goal of this first year is building that base program that maybe is just something that's once a month, having that base group of teens that are there, having that base group of adult core members and base group of families, and be able to identify maybe 1 or 2, 3 teens that are at the end of the year, maybe ready to move on into some deeper spiritual stuff. So when you get to year 2 and year 3, you can begin to do more. But it's all a slow process that's done in stages. That's what discipleship is all about, and that's ultimately what we're called to do: is walk with teens. It's not a sprint. It's not something that we're going to accomplish tomorrow. It's a process, a lifelong process of walking with teens to lead them closer to Christ. So hopefully this has been helpful. We're going to be offering later on this summer a couple of core team training sessions for yourself and any adult core that you're going to have that you have on your team, and we're going to talk about just some practical things like relational ministry, leading small groups, giving witnesses, and safe environment stuff, different things like that. But yeah, as you move into year one, don't be overwhelmed, but take it slow, and just remember that God has empowered you to do this. He's given you the gifts to do it. Whatever gifts you have, God has given you those for a reason, and He can do some amazing things. But we have to trust in Him. So once again, just thank you for joining us for this program, for joining us for all these sessions. I hope this has been a help. I'll definitely be praying for you and your ministry. Please pray for our diocesan youth ministry office and all the parishes in our diocese as well. But for myself and for the Diocese of Worcester, I just thank you for joining us, and hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully you got some good stuff out of it. If you have any questions, I'll leave up my contact information, and you can get a hold of me and ask whatever you need to, because that's what I'm here, the youth ministry office, to do, is to walk with you as you walk with teens. So thanks for joining us, and have a great day. God bless.